So I had to do what all nerds do and dig into it very deep, learn as much as I could about it. And as I kind of expanded my palate in the kitchen, the bourbon sort of grew along with it.
How did you get into whiskey, John? Because that's, people everywhere we go when we're at distilleries or restaurants or bars, people ask how we get into whiskey. And I'm curious, how'd you get rolling?
Yeah, this is definitely a question that comes up a lot. Frequently, it's sort of a what made you kind of get into the whiskey geek side of this, but it's all sort of the same answer for me. So I began drinking bourbon as sort of my main drink in my early 20s. And, that puts me into to age myself a bit, into the 15 or so year veterans phase of my whiskey career here. I really kind of got into it as a means of expanding my cooking. I love to cook. I like to make my own sauces, my own dressings, things like that as I'm cooking. And I picked up a couple recipes that called for bourbon in them. And I understood what it was in a very vague way. So I had to do what all nerds do and dig into it very deep, learn as much as I could about it. And as I kind of expanded my palate in the kitchen, the bourbon sort of grew along with it, where, I kind of cut my teeth on things like Benchmark and Ezra and Evan Williams, just like your very standard pours that you can always get for cheap. I drank a lot of Jim Beam Black. Hell, I went through a phase of drinking an absolute ton of Jim Beam Red Stag because you could throw a bottle of that in the golf bag and you could have a little bit of birdie juice between holes.
Oh, man.
There was a real phase of that. That was when it was only like one flavor. I think it was just black cherry. There was no crazy flavors in those days, back in the dark ages.
No peach cobbler.
Right. And from there, I just kind of grew into somebody who wanted to try more. I wanted to see what this one was, what that one was, what I liked about each one, what I thought was different. And that kind of led me to, it's very good that we're talking about this, auspicious timing, I suppose. But Booker's was, for the longest time, sort of my go-to, always have a bottle, get the new batch every time it comes out type of thing. It was 55-ish bucks when it was on sale here. It was always something that would just scratch the itch in a way that a lot of things didn't. It was almost always on the shelf. And so that was just something that I kind of really built a little bit of a following on. And I started to go down the Beam rabbit hole there a bit, try a lot of their things. And as I kind of progressed as a broader whiskey drinker, I found things like Whistlepig and Rye that sort of excited me. And I kind of dug into those a little bit and I realized that holy shit, I like more than one style of whiskey. And this kind of really led me to be like, okay, I got to put these thoughts down someplace. I need to start a website where I can start putting things together in a way that other folks can either learn from or make fun of me for, or just in general kind of get some enjoyment out of. So it's not just me drinking whiskey trying to experience this alone. And eventually that's sort of what made our paths collide. And here we are making our own whiskey content now, hopefully for some folks to enjoy on their own.
Hell yeah, man. It's interesting that you went from, I guess, what is it? You went from the kitchen to whiskey?
Yeah, and I brought the whiskey into the kitchen too pretty frequently, which, it is all good things if you ask me.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm the total opposite, which, is kind of our own theme as it is. But
True.
Whiskey is what brought me into the kitchen, right? So I started, I had a beer or two in college, one or two. And one time, I tried Wild Turkey 101 and thought holy cow, this is honestly pretty good, and at least for my age, I'm a little bit younger than you are. I think 93 is a pretty good vintage, but in college, the whole goal was to make alcohol not taste like alcohol while consuming entirely too much of it at any one time. But
right when you turn 21, of course.
Right. The moment the clock turns, it just flips that switch in your brain, of course. Correct. But, so it was really weird. I tried Wild Turkey 101. It was wow, I think I really, really like this. And then I snapped back to reality and realized I'm poor. So I'm going to have to revisit this after I graduate. So, Wild Turkey and I went steady through college. And after I graduated, I decided to start trying more and more whiskey. And that's when I realized you could really pay attention to the things that you drink and, the things, well, let me compare and contrast. Like if I'm going to spend $50 on a bunch of different bottles, like I should at least know how they're different. And so my way was to write that down, and kind of, I would grade them for myself. And then I thought, like, if I'm going to write this down, I may as well just post it to the internet, because that's what people in my era did.
Naturally.
And the more and more I did it, I was like, you can really train yourself to pick up differences and nuances. And it got me thinking about cooking and making food. Like, you can make food that tastes good, or you can make food that tastes great. And trying beer and wine, and even just like different tea and stuff like that. Like it opened up this whole world of just like thinking, not overthinking, but thinking carefully about the things that you're consuming and trying to understand why you like them, or if you try something you hate, you hate them. And then I blinked and I tried a couple thousand whiskeys and written about them, and and here we are at Whiskey Raiders. So
Here
kind
we
of
are.
a interesting path, but good times.
Absolutely, man. I think it's great. And I mean, what we're able to do here with sharing what we have amassed together as our whiskey knowledge, our own internal database, for lack
man.
of a better term. Hopefully, we could take these pours tonight, discuss them, share them, and if we're lucky, maybe even enunciate a few words in the right way, and people can enjoy a little bit of it.
Yeah, well, it's great to have everyone with us here tonight. Once again, I am Jay. I'm joined by John. So if you're looking for either of us, you can find me on Instagram at take.review, T8KE.review. And obviously at Whiskey Raiders, we're your home of whiskey reviews on the internet. Find John and his thoughts at the Bourbon Finder, both at thebourbonfinder.com and on Instagram. So we'd love to hear from you. How did you get into whiskey? Drop us a comment, kind of let us know, because it's one of the most interesting questions I like to ask people.